This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, September 6th. This is the opening of our fall practice period within full day Zazen Kai here at Endless Path Zendo. So we've been closed for the break, basically August, the summer, and now we're back in business together, which is really quite wonderful. It's from Henry Shukman, who's a very interesting teacher out in New Mexico. Mountain Cloud is where he is based. And that was originally one of Roshi Kapleau's places out in New Mexico. We've done sesshin there a number of times. I did with Dane and Henry Roshi, also I think with Roshi Kapleau way back. Yeah. So in any case, Henry wrote an interesting piece which goes like this. Dear friends, there's no two ways about it. We're living in deeply uncertain times. We're living in a poly-crisis, climate crisis, nuclear arsenal, political crises around the world. Democracy has not seemed this unstable in a long time, with the hot breath of looming autocracy on our necks. The great Tang Dynasty poet Du Fu said it all in the first lines of his poem from the 750s Common Era. The nation is shattered, mountains and rivers remain. The nation is shattered, mountains and rivers remain. This is a perfect summary of the practice approach to crisis. On the one hand, there's a world in crisis that we humans are heir to and need to face and do what we can to heal. And on the other hand, the great geocosmic forces continue their unfolding as this planet, the solar system, and the galaxy, the universe, continue. As practitioners, our practice mirrors these two faces of reality. On the one hand, we do what we can and what we are each called to do to help heal and repair the world in whatever small or larger ways we can. That includes healing ourselves, opening up to the healing that we need, recognizing the parts of us that are wounded, recognizing the evolutionary wiring we have inherited that can be destructive, training ourselves to become less harmful, more helpful, both to ourselves and others and our world. And on the other hand, the other great face of practice is awakening to the reality that is always here, that cannot be healed because it cannot be broken. A great truth that is always here and always well. This is what the mystics, sages, and adepts have reported finding across the ages. Not something that can be known as a thing, but an absence, an openness, where all ideas, opinions, ideologies, and views have dropped away. But it is not enough to open up like this, to awaken to the wide open sky where no blemish mars the view, as Zen has put it. That openness has to become the source and resource that allows us to face the troubles of our world in a new way, motivated by an infinite okayness, an unconditional love that is here to support us. The beautiful thing is that actually this requires no belief, theistic or otherwise. It requires no dogma or ideology or doctrine. It's a reality baked into our very existence, into our actual conscious experience in any moment. It is right here, now. Some say it's the one thing that never changes, even while all there is change. To recognize it can offer the great pivot of a lifetime, where we see another way than fear, craving, and suffering, and start to taste a path motivated by love, gratitude, service, and a desire to help. And that was signed with love and thanks from Henry Shukman. I met Henry many years ago when I was doing a session with Dane and Henry Roshi. We chatted for a few minutes. He's a very interesting fellow. In any case, let me add a note on that. We have right now before us one day of dedicated session effort that we each can make. And this effort of ours, though it seems innocuous, invisible, tiny, actually creates the space for possibilities, good ones, to arise and take form. I believe this very deeply about Zazen. It's not the solution to anything, but it creates the space in which solutions that might never see the light of day can arise and take form. It is a great gift. There's doing of it sincerely. It's subtle, and it happens in ways we may never logically understand. I think the brave little parrot Jataka is one of the clearest statements of this that comes out of Buddhist tradition. Bringing drops of water, such as we each can, will not put out a raging fire. But nonetheless, the sincere efforts of that little parrot move the gods who do intervene. Though no one in the story knows how that happens, the fire is indeed put out in the end. It's inexpressible. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful. And it's necessary. So let me read to you a little from one of my favorite books. It's a big, thick one, and it's got a great cover. And if you don't know this book, I recommend it. The Complete Poison Blossoms from a Thicket of Thorn, the Zen Records of Hakuin Zenji. And I'm going to read you a letter that Hakuin wrote. Hakuin, of course, was one of the truly great Japanese Zen teachers of several hundred years ago. He wrote this in his 58th year. At the time he was at a lecture meeting on the precious lessons of the Zen school. I'm sorry, it wasn't a letter. It was originally written as a preface for a work or collection of some kind, but that collection never quite came together. So here's the preface. I'll start after the first paragraph, which is a little complex for our purposes. In the autumn of the second year of Kampo, 1742, when I was at Ryotonji to conduct a large Dharma meeting, Mr. Matani invited me to one of these hermitages. I was able to spend several days amid its beautiful natural surroundings. He told me my Lord did not build these hermitages because he hoped they would someday become large and splendid temples. His true purpose was simply to provide a place where people sincerely interested in Zen practice, even one person or two, could come and stay in order to concentrate on investigating the matter of their self. I responded to this with a sigh of admiration, saying, Lord Chikazumi is a truly wise man. With his inherent aptitude for pursuing the way of Zen, he may be the person with the deep aspiration needed to raise up the fortunes of our school. If this aspiration rouses a Zen stalwart to come here dragging a battered old cooking pot, and he hangs around chewing on nothing but vegetable stalks, and he proceeds to quietly and rigorously engage in hidden practice and thoroughly investigate the great matter, then you mustn't speak of this hermitage as if it were a crude hut made from a few handfuls of reeds. It would surpass by 1,000 million times any great monastery with its splendid golden halls. I well know that his vision is one that far transcends the ideas held by others who occupy similar positions. I've also heard that Lord Chikazumi's everyday behavior is straight and true, and he upholds the precepts, performs zazen, recites sutras with rarely seen devotion and vigor. It is rare as a lotus flowering amidst the flames. My only wish is that he takes his practice just one step further. Mr. Matani said, what would that be? Please tell me. In the Sutra of the Bequeathed Teaching, this is in Hakuin Proceeds, The Buddha enumerated 20 difficulties humans must overcome if they are to reach attainment. One of them is the difficulty for the wealthy and famous to develop an affinity for the way. Everyone is inherently capable of directly attaining the four Buddha wisdoms. Who is there that does not have a liking for the way? I assume the four Buddha wisdoms, he means the four viharas, compassion, joy in the successes. What is it?
Joy, equanimity.
Joy, equanimity.
Loving kindness.
Yeah, loving kindness and joy in the success of others.
Right.
Yeah. Who is there that does not have a liking for the way? But to enter that way is extremely difficult. Unless a person enters the way and realizes the oneness of all things in himself, even though he takes only one meal each morning and spends his days and nights engaged in a life of rigorous practice, even though that becomes known to the heavenly gods and they shower him with flowers and fill the air with the scent of marvelous incense, it is all meaningless, nothing more than an indication that he is mired within birth and death on a grand scale. But there is a single word or phrase that can sever even the finest, most minute roots of delusion. It is like a fine sword of enormous length that stands leaning against the sky, always ready to destroy the old nests of illusion, or like an iron hammer of untold weight that will smash illusory thoughts to finest powder. He's talking about the count of one, of two. He's talking of Mu, or Hu, or Sekisha, single hand, single hand. A monk asked Zhao Chu, all things return to the one. Where does the one return to? Zhao Chu replied, when I was in Qingqiao, I made a cloth robe that weighed 7 pounds. These words can work with a marvelous effectiveness if you take them and apply yourself to them in your practice, if you bore into them when you are meditating and when you are engaged in daily activities, when you are walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, bore into them from the sides and from the front and from the rear, and continue boring into them until there is no place left to bore, no place to put either a hand or foot, nothing whatever you can apply thought or understanding to at that time. If you keep pushing steadily forward without faltering, the time will come when everything suddenly falls away and Satori opens up. The joy you experience at that time will be something you have never known before. No beneficial act you could perform would produce a result of such magnitude. How could anyone who aspires to become a person of great stature think it worth his while to engage in any good or beneficent acts apart from this? Mr. Matani said, I would like you to write this down and give it to me as a parting gift before I leave for Edo. I did, as he requested. So there's old Hakuin in his inimitable way, reminding us of what it's all really about, which of course does not discount whatsoever, as Henry pointed out, doing everything we can to make this a better world and for us to work very sincerely on becoming the best people we can be. So to take a look at how that plays out in a life, we'll take up Han-shan again and see how he's doing. I think he's in his 58th year at this point, 57th year. Okay. So we'll start backing up a little bit, just a little bit. The miscreants were dispersed. This is his 56th year, and the order was restored. We're reading from the Autobiography of Master Han-shan. His dates are 1546, 16 to 1623. Obviously a Chinese master, Hakuin is Japanese, Chinese master of the Ming Dynasty. The miscreants were dispersed. And what's so wonderful actually about Han-shan is you see him bringing his practice into the events of life. He's not continuing to sit up on an isolated mountain peak. He's down where stuff is happening, just like us, working as a human being to improve the lot and of everything he comes in touch with. This is also the expression of his deep, deep realization. The miscreants were dispersed and order was restored. Thus, by being instrumental in pacifying the community, I was able to repay my debt to Viceroy Dai. Extremely grateful, he became an even more enthusiastic protector of the Dharma. Under his aegis, I was able to expand Kaoji's temples. Kaoji is the place where the sixth patriarch, if you remember, had been practicing and training people and had taken over. It had been turned into a kind of slaughterhouse and a lot of shops and all kinds of things going on there. And he worked with the governor of the province to get that cleaned up and restored to a place of practice. It had really fallen into worse than disrepair. It had become really, as I said, a kind of slaughterhouse. Animals were slaughtered, meat was being sold, really contrary to the whole spirit of the place. Interesting how things happen like that, isn't it? This powerful place, and it took someone coming along and digging in to try and do something about it that brought it back. In any case, extremely grateful, he became an even more enthusiastic protector of the Dharma. Under his aegis, I was able to expand Kaoji's temples, improve roads, start a training program for monks, arrange for certain accomplished monks to teach Buddhist precepts, establish clerical rules and regulations, appoint a hierarchy to govern efficiently and fairly, collect rents, pay taxes, and redeem all of the temple's properties. All this was accomplished within a year. So that was the end of his 56th year. 57th year, 1602 to 1603. During this year, additional work was done at Kaoji. We renovated the sixth patriarch's hall, built a retaining wall at the rear of the temple complex, improved numerous paths and lanes, and converted some of the secular buildings that had been constructed by the merchants into guest houses for visiting monks. The 58th year, 1603 to 1604. In the 11th months of that winter, Master Daguan was jailed in the capital because of charges made against him in an anonymous letter sent to a government official. Remember, the politics of his time were just outrageous. The kind of self-centeredness of various groups and of people in power trying to take over various aspects of the political force of religious institutions was stunning. Kind of very much like the kind of thing we're seeing in our own time. This is not the first time such things have happened. So I feared that his association with me had made him enemies. Remember, Han-shan had been accused of all kinds of things by those who were jealous. Unfortunately, there was a whole Taoist contingent that wanted Buddhism thrown out, and Han-shan, as a major representative of that, was under attack and had been jailed for a while, and it looks like he'd been tortured for a time as well. But then he worked only to bring peace to the whole thing. Really stunning use of what practice opens to one into his time, into his world. So I feared that his association with me had made him enemies, and indeed, at his trial, he was implicated in my case. I knew that Master Daguan would never betray me, but knowing also the power of my enemies, I fully expected new indictments to be handed down against me. I prayed and waited. Then, sadly, Master Daguan died in his cell while sitting in Zazen. The emperor was merciful, and no further charges were brought against me. I was permitted to travel to the south. Also, that year, my attendant, Jin Guang, joined the Sangha. The 59th year, 1604 to 1605. That spring, in the first month, I left Kaoji and returned to Leju. I recalled that Master Daguan had once told me that the Shurangama Sutra required more commentary. Cause and effect as related to worldly affairs needed to be thoroughly explained, he had said. I decided to write about immorality. Get this. I decided to write about immorality and how evil forces when they are not properly restrained, can corrupt even the best people. I called my book Chun Hui Zhao's Doctrine of the Mind. How evil forces, when not properly restrained, can corrupt even the best people. The 60th year, 1605 to 1606, the precepts are so important. So important. How can religion become such a force for self-centeredness, for selfishness, for harm? It's just astonishing. Any case, that spring in the third month, I crossed Hainan Sea to Nanzhou and stayed at Ming Chang Temple where I wrote the preface to the book on immorality, which I had just completed. I also visited Fenglong Temple, made famous by the poet Su Tongpo. Great poet, Su Tongpo. I hope you know some of his work. His Enlightenment verse is quite famous in Zen circles. I probably can't recite it properly, but it's something like the mountain stream is not his long, broad tongue. The something mountains is not his entire body. Last night, 64,000 sutras passed through my mind. Today, how can I say anything about it? Something of that sort. Do look it up. You'll enjoy it. I also visited Fenglong Temple, made famous by the poet Su Tongpo, and went to see White Dragon Spring. I searched for, but could not locate the temple of Chan Master Zhu Fang. I then wrote about my explorations in the area. See, he seemed to have the same sickness as some of us, the writing sickness. It can be quite exhausting. I don't recommend it unless you have to do it, but if you do, then like everything else, do it with your whole heart. Suffer the consequences. Enjoy yourself. I then wrote about my explorations and also in the area and also recorded my impressions of the Golden Corn Fountain, which I had seen when visiting Mingshan. One night, as I sat on a hill watching the distant town of Zhuqing, I had a terrible premonition that the town was going to be destroyed. I told my followers about my premonition and asked them to pray for the town's survival. None of the townspeople gave my warning any consideration at all. You'd think, here's this famous Zen teacher. People would jump when he said, hey, be careful that something's going to happen. Nah, nobody paid any attention whatsoever. Dismayed by their indifference, I decided to leave the area. Everyone pleaded with me to stay, but I refused. One night, 2 weeks after I left, a strong earthquake struck. The town's gate, eastern wall, and numerous buildings were destroyed. Mingjiang Temple was also collapsed. The bed in which I would have been sleeping when the quake occurred was buried under tons of debris. Had I not left when I did, I would surely have been killed. That summer, in the fourth month, the viceroy allowed me to return to Zhuangzhou. That autumn, in the seventh month, I went back to Gaoji for the completion of the restoration work on the Sixth Patriarch's Temple. Unfortunately, due to a lack of money, only 60 or 70% of the work had been done. It's so interesting. You know, when you think of the depth of his practice and his commitment and his maturity, things still just didn't work smoothly. Take heart, take heart. It's a complex world, and we all have various strains of karma. Zen tradition says, you know, you could be doing fine, everything great, but karma from a million lifetimes ago could ripen and you'll get obstacles you never dreamed of. It's like that. We always are in ups and downs, doing our very best to realize the very ground of everything, right in the midst of whatever our life is bringing front and center. I had to go to several Buddhist officials and beg for the required funds. With their donations, the rebuilding project was finally completed that year. I also repaired the Changchun An Temple in Guangzhou it became a subsidiary temple to Kaoji. That winter, in the 10th month, my attendants Guanyi and Guangzi joined the Sangha. The 61st year, 1606 to 1607. That spring, in the 3rd month, I visited Dingyu Wu and Nanzhu. I also visited Premier Zhang Hongyang to thank him for his support during my trial. When I was arrested, Premier Chang, who was the chief minister at the time and knew the details of the case, tried his best to rescue me. He was happy to see me and invited me and my followers to dinner at Hsu Yun restaurant. During the meal, he said, everyone knows that Master Han-shan is a learned Chan master, but few people know how much he has done for the dynasty. He then went on to list my efforts made on behalf of the imperial family. I was asked to speak about some of my experiences, and everyone was both surprised and touched by the sentiments I expressed. Later, I returned to Kaoji. When I passed, Wenjiang, Counselor Zhu, invited me to stay in his home for a few days. After this, I went to Hangang, where I became very ill. General Chen Ir-shi brought me to his house, and I spent an entire month there recovering. I managed to write 12 poems during my stay with him. I told you, it's this kind of sickness, you can't avoid it. There he is writing 12 poems. Can't keep him down. That autumn, in the 8th month, the emperor's grandson was born. In celebration, the emperor ordered the release of all old and sick prisoners who were suffering banishment. He also offered amnesty to those who could successfully appeal their convictions. I petitioned the provincial judge of Leju to review my case, and after doing so, he ordered the suspension of my sentence and my exemption from further military supervision. The 62nd year, 1607 to 1608. In the spring, according to Viceroy Dai's request, I returned to Kaoji and resumed teaching the Buddha Dharma. When I was young, I often read Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, an ancient work, the meaning of which was extremely profound and often difficult to comprehend. Later, having studied it thoroughly and being certain that I understood it, I complied with my students' request and began to write a commentary on it. I was 47 when I began writing this commentary, and now, in my 62nd year, I was finally able to finish it. Oh, I hate to tell you how familiar that sounds. I started this book 20 years ago, and I finally finished it. Jeez, that's how true it is. The main hall of Kaoji Temple badly needed repairs, but there was no money to pay for the work. In the spring, however, Superintendent Feng Guancheng of the Western District came to see me. During the previous night, as he slept in the mountains, he dreamed of Kuan Yin, Hanon Bodhisattva of great compassion, hearer of all the cries of the world. Kanon's enlightenment, great enlightenment, of course, is said to have come about through working on who is hearing. The inquiry, who is hearing, brought about his great awakening. Aiken Roshi told me that when Yamada Roshi had completed all his formal koan practice, he took up who is hearing as his never-ending koan. He worked on it all the rest of his life. So when he arrived at Kaoji, he went immediately to the main hall to pay reverence to the Buddha. When he looked up at the 3 great Buddhas of the Western paradise, he was filled with sorrow. 2 of the statues were badly damaged. He came to me and asked why I didn't have them properly restored. I answered that we simply did not have the money to do it. Then he asked how much it would cost to effect repairs to the entire hall, including the statues. And when I gave him an estimate, he said, well, that doesn't seem too difficult a sum to raise. I'll try to get it for you. He went to Viceroy Dai and told him about the sad condition of the main hall. Viceroy Dai said, when one sees a child fall into a well, one crawls down to save him. Seeing now that the holy site of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is ruined, one cannot sit back and do nothing. Then, when the superintendent repeated my estimate of the cost of repairs, Viceroy Dai replied, "This should not be too difficult." He immediately ordered an official from Nansha to come and make a formal estimate. He invited me to come and discuss the project with him, and upon learning that he intended to finance the reconstruction with official funds, I offered a counter plan. How about that? Since it really wouldn't be correct, get this, to use public monies for such an expense. This is so heartfelt for Han-shan to see this project happen, and yet his ethical sense is so sophisticated, so superb. He stops them and says, since it really wouldn't be correct to use public monies for such an expense, and since great merit accrues to those who voluntarily contribute to the creation of Buddhist works, why not let everyone contribute what he can? Viceroy Dai then instructed his subordinates to receive with documented receipt the donations of private citizens. The money would be given directly to Viceroy Dai and not to the monks. Within a month, nearly 1,000 gold coins were collected. I went to the western region to shop for timber, and when I reached Zhuangzhou, the viceroy asked me to remain and supervise the repairing of Bao Yu Hall. Another official did my timber shopping for me. When the repair work was completed that winter, I wrote a story about it. The purchased timber was gathered at the riverbank and gradually transported downriver. In the 11th month, Viceroy Dai was accused of mishandling a military reprisal against some bandit invaders from Indochina. He was dismissed from his office. The 64th year, 1609 to 1610. Things keep happening, don't they? That spring, in the 2nd month, we set sail from Menjiang with our cargo of timber. But the winds, which were favorable when we left Zhuangzhou, had picked up considerably. And by the time we neared Lingyan Pass, they were gusting so much that, taking haven, we lowered our sails and dropped anchor. I went ashore to visit Zhuangji, and there, while awaiting better sailing conditions, guess what? I wrote A Dream Journey to Zhuangji. When we finally docked at Menjiang, I gathered some longshoremen, and while they unloaded the cargo, I returned to the Sixth Patriarch's Temple. I could not have imagined my reception there. A few troublemaking monks, acting from personal jealousy, or perhaps at the instigation of some of the merchants I had caused to be evicted. Remember, he evicted the merchants and the butchers who had taken over the Sixth Patriarch's temple, had convinced everyone that I had diverted thousands of gold coins to my private use. I was accused of being a thief. Disheartened, I declined to comment upon so false an accusation, and while the formal charges against me were being prepared, I retired to the meditation hall and silently recited the Diamond Sutra. Then, as I repeated the lines, oblivious to the turmoil around me, my attention became fixed on the Buddha's insistence that it was far better to teach one line of Buddhist truth than it was to perform 1,000 worldly acts of charity, however well-intentioned. Chagrined, I clearly saw that I myself was the author of the charges against me, for I had allowed myself to become too involved in worldly accomplishments. I, who had been privileged to understand even a small part of the Buddha's great wisdom, had a duty to enlighten others to that wisdom. And instead, I had busied myself with fundraising and gone shopping for timber. To atone for such dereliction, I wrote a long commentary, The Diamond Cutter of Doubts, in which I tried to clarify any possible doubts as to its wonderful meaning. During my trial, I presented evidence of my innocence and pleaded my case as best I could. Then, while staying in a boat on the Furong River, I awaited the court's decision. During this time, Prefect Zhang Chu-dong invited me to come by boat to visit him. The weather was bad, and no sooner had I landed than the boat I had taken was destroyed by fierce winds. I became seriously ill, however, and the prefect's physician had to be summoned to attend me. When I returned, I was so weak I had to move into a hotel. The 65th year, 1610 to 1611. In the 7th month of that autumn, while I was again living on the riverboat, awaiting the court's decision, the official in charge of investigating my case came to me to review my testimony. While he was with me, the court unexpectedly handed down a guilty verdict. The official doubted the truth of this verdict, and on his own authority went to Kaoji to interrogate the monks who had brought the charge against me. He also examined the vouchers of every transaction I had made and determined that not a single penny of the sums entrusted to me had been improperly spent. Finding no evidence whatsoever of embezzlement or misappropriation, he reversed the court's decision. This reversal caused the authorities to initiate an investigation into the monks' true motives for having brought such false charges against me in the first place. To deliberately file false charges and then to give perjured testimony were capital offenses. When the conspiracy against me was exposed, I did my best to save the monks' lives. But the authorities were far too outraged by this attempt to abuse the judicial system. Far too outraged by this attempt to abuse the judicial system. Take heed. Take heed. Though I was repeatedly asked to return to Kaoji, I had not the heart or strength to do so. Instructing my disciple, Bhikshu Huai Yu, to take over my position at the monastery, I left for Guangzhou. The 66th year, 1611 to 1612. That spring, in the 3rd month, I went to Dinghu Mountain in the Zhuangzhou district to recuperate from my illness and to regain my strength. While convalescing, I was able to discourse on the Dharma with followers and scholars. I was also able to write clarifying doubts about the great teaching. The 67th year, 1612 to 1613. During this year, I stayed at Shangchun Temple, where I lectured on the Shraddhopada Shastra, the Awakening of Faith. If you don't know the text, the Awakening of Faith, it's an early Zen document. May even be pre-Zen, but it's really worth reading. Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana. I used to read that over and over. I found it really a moving book, ancient text, really moving and very worth reading. I think Yoshida S. Hakata is the only translator. I think Columbia University Press did the book. In any case, the 8 Parijnanas and the 100 divisions. Because many of my students had difficulty in understanding my essay applauding the Lotus Sutra, I wrote an additional commentary in order to resolve their difficulties. The 68th year, 1613 to 1614. This summer, I initiated a series of lectures on the Sutra of Complete Enlightenment. But by the time I reached the midpoint of the series, a huge abscess had developed on my back. Many treatments and medicines were given, but the infection did not respond, and my condition worsened. I grew so weak that Commander Wang Han-chun actually began to prepare for my funeral. But my luck changed. One day, an alcoholic named Liang Jinshan, who happened to be an expert in the treatment of my particular affliction, unexpectedly came to call on me. Things logically don't always unfold logically, or whatever you want to call it. Suddenly, this guy calls on him. He examined my abscess, pronounced it serious but curable, and proceeded to treat it with his own herbal concoction. Miraculously, my condition improved, and by the winter, I was completely healed. I wrote him a letter expressing my gratitude. Of course, this abscess was a recurrence of the one I had had when I was 20. At that time, I had regarded this affliction as retribution for some unremembered sin. In other words, he saw it as the result of some karmic circumstance from his past, unknown, who knows when. In atonement and to effect a cure, I had prayed and recited the Avatamsaka Sutra. Thereafter, whenever the abscess recurred, I would recite the sutra until the infection subsided. For 48 years, I had suffered from this condition, and throughout these years, I was always able to control it with the power of prayer. But ultimately, the karmic debt remained unpaid. It was evident that I still had not atoned for that ancient sin. In the 10th month, when I was well again, I received a letter from Zheng Jinjian asking me to retire with him and Nangui. He and I had been corresponding for more than 10 years, and frequently we had discussed the possibility of retiring to Nangui when the proper time came. Feeling now that the time had indeed come, I packed my bags and headed towards Nangui. When I first came to Guangzhou, dozens of disciples followed me there. But as time passed, they gradually dispersed, and only a few bhikshus remained in permanent residence with me. Bhikshus Tongjiang, Zhaozi, and 3 of my attendants accompanied me. A few days after I arrived, my disciple Fusheng and my attendant Jingguang, who had both been visiting their parents in the north, also came to join me. Let's see if we can just fit in one more. The 69th year, 1614 to 1615. That spring, in the first month, 69th year, hey, he's eligible for the COVID vaccination. That spring, in the first month, I visited Deshan Mountain and went 4 months on this occasion. Later, I visited Upasaka Feng Wancheng at Wuling, where I wrote more poetry. Upasaka Feng, Upasaka, it means layman, lay practitioner, non-ordained but serious. And some of his friends kindly gave donations for the restoration of Donghua Vihara. At Chuling, Prince Yong invited me to a vegetarian feast. And at Dashan Temple, the monks requested me to lecture on and give the precepts. In other words, jukai. He was asked to give jukai, give the precepts. That summer, in the 4th month, I returned to Hudong, thereupon learning of the empress mother's death. She was a patron of his, the empress mother. I held a funeral service to repay the debt of gratitude that I owed her. Notice of the ceremony was given by imperial proclamation. Ever since my days at Donghai, I had planned to write a commentary called A Thorough Explanation of the Shurangama Sutra, but I had never found the time to do it. Finally, in the 5th month of that summer, I began to write the commentary, and in 50 days, I completed it. In the 11th month, when Donghua Vihara was restored, I stayed at the mountain and wrote more poetry. We'll stop there at the beginning of his 70th year. We'll stop here and recite our great vows for all.